I'm very pleased to be able to tell everybody that we now feel that we can reopen the gardens here at Caerhays on Sunday the 14th of February. This was the date which we had always planned to reopen the gardens, but we were far from certain until recently how the other great gardens of Cornwall would be reacting and when they would be open. We didn't want to find ourselves out on a limb and doing something that other people weren't doing. But this morning we've had a lively Zoom discussion with all of the great gardens of Cornwall, and the majority of us are now opening in a limited way, purely for local people, with no shops open and distancing, sensible one-way route, and all the sort of things which need to be in place for us to remain open and not fall foul of any of the authorities. We know that some of the western Cornish gardens like Rhododendron have been open for a week or two. We know that the National Trust have opened up Trelisic and Anhydruk, but many of the other National Trust gardens won't be open for another week or two yet. We also know that Rhododendron are reopening, and also, of course, that Helygon and Eden are shut for different reasons. Eden because of their unfortunate landslides, and Helygon because they're having a major building revamp and would have been shut anyway with or without COVID. So when you come to Caerhays this year, you will find that the car parking down on the beach now enables you to pay for your garden tickets down there. And when you come up to the garden entrance here, the cost of your car parking will be refunded against the cost of your garden entry ticket. That sounds a bit convoluted, but it means you can spend as long as you like going around the garden. You can book online, but we are perfectly happy for people to turn up if they are genuinely local and not breaking any rules, and keep their distance and behave sensibly, as I'm sure everybody will. The map of the garden I'm looking at here shows 140 acres which you can wander around in. Hopefully that will be more than enough to keep you COVID safe. And now I'm just going to show you a few little glimpses of what you'll see in the garden as you come around now. It's a great time for camellias. The magnolias will be starting in a week or two, but quite a few rhododendrons have already started out, as we'll see. So here we've got rhododendron Bo Peep. Rhododendron Bo Peep comes in a yellow form as here, and there is another form which has pinkish flowers rather than yellow ones. It was a Caerhays raised hybrid by my great-grandfather in the 1920s. And it's always one of the first rhododendrons to be making a really good show. Despite the 10 days of rain that we've had, we have had 2 warm, mild days this week, and this has turned from being in bud to nearly being full out in the last few days. So it will be ready to await your arrival full out in a week's time. Here's more of a tree rhododendron, and this is actually a very early flowering species of arboreum called Arboreum subspecies cinnamomum. And it has this extraordinary, in the bell, each individual bell flower, it has like a reddish pink frill round the white bell. Quite an unusual thing in a rhododendron. And when you look up, you can see that it isn't full out yet and won't be for another few days, but it's starting to produce a real spectacle, and quite an unusual one for you to see when you hopefully get here from local places only. The camellia season is in full swing, and I'm standing behind or beside rather, a huge 100-year-old plant of Camellia japonica Lady Clare. The original plant came here in about 1902. I don't think it was quite this one, but it's always early into flower. It has the most enormous, huge flowers, and despite all the wind and rain we've had this week, it's still putting on a beautiful show. The plant's a good 15 foot high, but Lady Clare has this very drooping, floppy habit that forms a rather rounded, dense bush, often as here with a hole in the middle of it, because that's just the way it grows. Only one of hundreds and hundreds of camellias that are already out in the garden and looking great. So here's a different sort of camellia, a camellia times William's eye, called Beatrice Michael. That's been out for a week or two already, but you can see it's still loaded with buds. It's a very delicate, light pink. Beatrice Michael was the wife of Charles Michael, one of the only four-head gardeners who worked here in the last 110 years, who I just remember meeting in about 1960. He retired as head gardener here in 1955, and it's very nice to see a camellia named after him looking very well, just as he probably would have seen it 70 years ago, although rather smaller. Now this is what we'll be waiting for in the last couple of weeks of February. These magnolia buds have two outer casings on them, and you can see that the second of the casings is literally popping open, which means that this bud will be ready to flower probably, depending on the weather, in about a fortnight's time. Look how many magnolia buds there are on this wonderful tree, and think what a picture that'll be in 2 or 3 weeks. If we have another couple of days like today, it's surprising how quickly these tree magnolias will come out, but if it goes cold, they'll sit there and hopefully it won't be cold enough to damage the buds. At the moment, they're looking very good.